Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's topic is 5 things not to say to a grieving parent. One of the most horrifying things that can ever happen to a parent is the loss of a child. I gave birth at 24 weeks. I was 22 years old, just married, and it was our first child, and I started having problems at 20 weeks. She came at 24 weeks. 14 weeks later, we were planning her funeral, and it just was one of the most surreal experiences ever. During that time, immediately after, the world just becomes a very intense, overwhelming place to be in, and people struggle with what to say to you, how to relate to you. It's just there are no words. And this year alone, I've had 3 friends who don't know each other. 3 people I know that have no connection to each other, go through have losses at various stages. One was expecting twins. One of the twins didn't make full gestation. One had twins, but she had them early, and one of the twins only made it a week, and another one was pregnant, and the pregnancy did not end as expected. And one thing that I noticed was the things people say, and it's not like it's bad intentions, but I don't think we think of what we're saying before we say it. I don't think we really consider where some of these things that we say come from. They're just things that get passed on over and over and over again, and we just say them because it just seems like the right thing to say. But those of us who are grieving are like, and it's hard to have to be in a headspace where I have to understand that, oh, that's just what people say. In the meantime, I'm grieving and I'm losing my mind. So yeah, I just thought I'd run up a quick video and mention a few of these things, and hopefully we'll start to consider the things we say and whether or not they're the best thing to say. And the number one thing is they are in a better place. Grief is irrational at best, and this statement is the most uncomforting statement you can utter. And for me, when Shareth died, part of you was like, yeah, she's no longer in pain, she's no longer fighting for her life, she's no longer going through processes that are painful in order to get her to a place where she can be here without assistance. She was ventilated and various drips all the time. But as a parent, in the back of your mind, it's like, no, her place is healed and here with me. Simple solution would be to be healed and here with me. So you're trying to reconcile the thought of her being out of that discomfort versus, well, I'm your mama, your mom and your dad want you here. And it's a hard sentence to process. It's a hard thing to hear people say, oh, they're in a better place, there's no more suffering. It's a hard place because you're trying to reconcile your own suffering versus your child no longer suffering. And it gets complicated, and that sentence causes just a lot of thoughts and feelings, and I've grown to resent it, honestly. And in talking to a few people, they understand that that's what people say, but it has angered a few people I know, and it has sort of caused other people I know to not want to communicate with people, because it's almost like once a statement is said, it's almost like a blanket statement expecting to make it all better, and let's just have a normal conversation. No. Number 2, God knows best. once again, assume that the grieving person you're talking to is irrational. And though we may have religious beliefs that we've adhered to all our lives, this brings so many things into question that it would take forever for me to even explain the things that are questioned. Your beliefs are questioned, your expectations are questioned, your reason for living are questioned, your purpose, your capabilities as a parent. There's a deep sense of failure in losing a child, and just saying that God knows best in that situation, especially when it's fresh, it's almost like, okay, so it's in my best interest to make me feel gutted and hollowed out and like I failed. Gotcha. And that's where a lot of our mindset is. It's like there are no words, so you have to be careful with your words when you're speaking to a grieving parent. Just point blank. There's awkwardness, there's discomfort, but you got to understand where we're coming from. We don't think it's fair all the time to have to make concessions for you and what you say. So yeah, that's the goal of this video, is just to show these points and for you to maybe think about what you say the next time you encounter someone who is in a very tumultuous place of losing a child. It's not that we're trying to be disrespectful. There's no disrespect. There's no flying up in God's face, as people say. It's just a very horrendous time that's hard to process, and trying to smooth it over with whatever our religious beliefs are. It doesn't always, I wouldn't say work, but it's not always the headspace that we're in. It's not always the emotional space that we're in, and it takes time for us to process what we're going through and reconcile whatever we believe with the experience. Because planning a funeral for your child is, in everyone's mind, fundamentally the wrong order of life. No parent should be sitting and planning the funeral of their child, because that's just not the way you expect things in life to pan out. That's not the plan. The number 3 thing that it was said to me, and I just had visions of putting my hands around the person's neck, and it was a very close relative. You can have another one, or you have other kids. Okay, let's compare this, I don't know, maybe to you losing your arm. Let's say I cut off your arm and I go, don't worry about it, you have another one. I'm sure you could continue to learn to live your life with this one arm, but think about it, life will never be the same. You can learn to do everything with your one arm. You can learn to maneuver, but in the back of your mind, there's always the loss of your arm. In the front of you, literally, there's the loss of your arm. And that's how it is for a grieving parent, even though we've learned to carry on through life and function and be okay. The birthdays, death anniversaries, milestones, just everyday things, sometimes you wonder, I wonder what they would have looked like, what they'd be doing now, what their character would have been like. There's one particular baby that I know who was there the night I had Sheriff. I'm still in contact with her mom, and my heart sings every year on her birthday. I just love to see pictures of her, and it's bittersweet because in the back of my mind I go, well, Sheriff would have been, maybe the same height or the same build, or she'd have been this way or that way, and what kind of hair would she had, and who would she look like? Would she look like me? Would she look like her dad? It's a lot, but it's never erased by having other children. I have 3 additional children, and they're very aware of their big sister, and she's very much a part of the family in memory, and my memory, but they're aware of her, and they've never replaced her And I think people feel like the sooner that you can have another kid, it will make you feel better. It doesn't. It makes the loss more profound in a way. When I got pregnant with my son right after Shareth had passed, we hadn't sat down and decided not to get pregnant, and we hadn't decided to get pregnant. But when it happened, I was a wreck. And it took some time for me to get to a place of like, this is happening, it'll be okay. It took me a while to accept that he was going to be full term, because when I got to 20 weeks, I was antsy. I got to 24 weeks, I was jumpy. 30 weeks, 38 weeks came, I was still pregnant, and was like, yes! But you still have that worry, you still have that fear, because the loss of a child makes it clear to you that babies and young children and people die, and that never leaves you. So that's a fear that remains with you. Yeah, so it's just, it's a lot. And to be told that you can have another one is not part of your, it's not a solution, and it shouldn't be part of your arsenal in talking to a grieving parent. Number 4 is to pray. This is iffy for a lot of people, because you're in a situation where, when you think about it, who was praying harder than the parent before they became a grieving parent? Because most parents pray for their children. Most parents hope for the best for their children. For those who've experienced sick children, injured children, premature children like I did, prayer is just like the first thing you do. It's what you do constantly. You exist in a state of prayer, and when it's all said and done and they're no longer here, it's hard to process what happened, because it's like, so the answer to my prayer was no. So the answer to my prayer was, okay, like, let's think about this. How do I move on from here? Where do I go from here? So when you tell a grieving parent to pray, a lot of times, especially when it's fresh, it's like, what am I praying for? I prayed and this is the answer I got. So I should pray again for more disappointment. I should pray again for what? And it's not, I just want people to understand that it's not being disrespectful. It's just those raw feelings you have in a moment, and these are things that a lot of people don't like to talk about. They don't like to admit. They don't like to say it out loud. It's like, whoa, that thought there isn't in line with my religious beliefs, so I don't think that's a road I should go down. But truth be told is, if you don't go down it, then at some point later in life you're going to go down it. You're going to have it come up again. You're going to have other situations that are going to trigger you off, and then you're eventually going to have to sit down and process those feelings and those thoughts. It's not saying that those feelings and thoughts will remain forever, but they do reshape the way you handle things. They reshape the way you go through life. And whatever the reason is for the answer that you got to your prayer, that's a personal journey that you're going to have to handle on your own. But to be told to pray is one of those things that I know there's a couple of us who are like, okay, because I wasn't praying all along, so you just throw that in there, and it's almost not accusatory, but it's almost like, is you crazy? Like, I've been praying, and people don't get it. They don't get it. The number 5 thing is, I can't imagine what you are going through. Well, you can. You just don't want to. It's uncomfortable. No one wants to sit down and be like, well, what would life be like if this particular person no longer existed? Especially if it's a person that you love and adore, and heaven forbid, someone that you gave birth to, you have to imagine them no longer existing. This is just, it's unimaginable, we always say, but the truth be told is, you can sit and you can imagine it, and it would put you in a better headspace in order to relate to who you're talking to. Everyone has a different level of empathy, and some of us don't tap into it as much as others. For some, it comes natural and it's like, oh my God, that is just, whew. And for others, they just let that slip out of their mouths, and it makes us feel isolated. It makes us feel like alone. It just, it's like a base part of human nature where you're telling me, sorry it's you, but glad it's not me. Well, truth is, we're glad it's not you too, because it's not something we would wish on our worst enemy, but it's not a statement we want to hear come from you. I mean, I would rather you say, I don't know what to say. I'm here, I don't know what to say. But to say, I can't imagine what you're going through, is like, well, it sucks beyond all reason, beyond all description. And yeah, that statement's just, it just complicates where we're at, especially if you say it in those days where it's still fresh, where we're still processing what happened, where it still doesn't feel real. It makes it hard for us to have a conversation with you, because then we don't know what to say. We don't know how to explain to you what it feels like. We don't know if anything we say ever makes sense to you. So what's the point of having a conversation? Because basically what it is that you're going on with your life while we are stuck in almost pause mode, trying to figure out, well, this just happened. Yeah, that was the little one. Yeah, so what can you say? What can you say? What can you do? I mean, I guess those 5 things, you're sitting there like, well, you just took everything out of my arsenal. What do I have left? So what you have left is pausing and thinking. So what you have left is things like just initiating a conversation that will let the person vent comfortably. And you have to be in a place where you're not going to judge, because there will be some things said that you really have no reaction to. Not because you don't want to, it's because you don't know how to. There are some thoughts that come forward and you can't poo-poo or there or platitude these things away. You've got to let this person process what they're feeling. You've got to let them get through it, and your job is to be there, especially if you're in person. If you're someone who's able to be there in person. I know it's kind of iffy with everything going on with social distancing and wearing masks, but your presence is very welcoming if you're in a place of just being there and listening. You can be there and you can offer to run an errand, you can bake, you can cook, you can send flowers, you can do something, babysit their kids, their remaining kids. You can offer to be of, I guess, use in some way while you try to figure out how to be present for them. And just create a judgment-free zone where they feel loved and heard. If virtual is the only way you're in contact with someone, you can order a meal service, send an e-card, send flowers. You can be a listening ear. And even if that seems like an impossible setup and you don't know how to initiate the conversation, well, don't type how are you. You can send a heart emoji, send a hug. You can just be like, thinking of you today, I'm here if you need me. Those usually get pretty good responses. I know those prompted me to talk. Those prompted me to be okay with being like, well, today is a really crappy day. I woke up this morning and it just hit me. Or I was going to get ready to go somewhere and I realized I didn't have to go. Like for me, I got used to going to the hospital every morning and getting up and not going. was weird was just like, I have nowhere to go this morning. That caused me to break down several times. Like, I've been going to the hospital twice a day, every day, and boom, there was no gradual tapering off. It was just, oh, that's not needed. So these are different mental spaces where grieving parents are at, depending on their situation. Sometimes they'll talk and sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll tell you, I'm good. Still check in a couple of hours later. They might not be good. They just might not feel like talking right then. Some days they'll have normal conversations. They'll ask you how you're doing. They'll check in on you, on your family, and you can just answer and have a normal conversation. And other days they'll be at the bottom of the blackest pit. You need to follow cues. You don't want to just hop up and be talking about your family event, and then if so and so come in, and if we can potluck it or order out, and or lamenting different things, and that person sitting there like, I don't care. Like, do you know where I'm at? Do you know what I just went through? Like, so it's just giving you a little bit of insight as to where a grieving parent's mental and emotional state can be, where it can be, and how it fluctuates. And yeah, those are my suggestions on how to maneuver with dealing with a friend or a family member who's going through a hard time. And one other thing that you need to avoid is saying nothing out of the fear of being offensive or upsetting. Like I said, if you don't know what to say, it's easier if you say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here. Because in saying nothing at all, it adds to a feeling of abandonment. It adds to that isolated feeling like, well, I'm in this by myself. Like, no one gets it. And for me, I didn't want to have other people with my experience to relate to, but it happened that way, and it became, you end up with a support group, but you also want those who haven't gone through it to sort of keep you grounded in the real world. It's a balance. You don't want just a circle of trauma bonded people. You want to maintain your close circle of friends. It's just that conversations and relating, it'll shift. And yeah, I'm hoping that this video helps anyone who's trying to figure out what to say to someone, anyone who said anything that I mentioned and they probably got a funny reaction, or just, we're all here to help each other, and we're all here to support each other. So I hope this helps. See you in the next one.